We gas ourselves up, but we short on breath. Talking about we eating, but who we really cooking. Dreaming about greens, but ain't nobody looking. No land, no acres, no seeds in the ground. When the hunger hits, who's gonna be around? We starving every day, and it just ain't the food. Feeding the hood garbage, got 'em acting their fool. We flossing with rides, stunting with chains, but these bars we spitting just bring more pain. We guilty as hell, preaching all these lies, selling debt to the kids, and we acting surprised. We commercialize the pain, broadcast the grief, tell the youth to hustle, but hide the beef. We glorify the trap, invite them to the flames, just like Reagan brought the crack on planes. Back in the 80s when the streets got soaked, my people, my brothers, all got choked. Reagan said no trades, but we know the deal. He left us in the dirt, man, that shit was real. I was just a shorty watching it unfold, old enough to see how we got sold. War on drugs, but it was war on us. Cops on our necks, no love, no trust. They labeled us thugs, beast on the block, made us kiss the pavement while they cleaned our clock. Prison became business thanks to Reagan's game. Free labor is the truth in America's name. Slavery's dead, man. That's just a word. Read the 13th Amendment, it's still absurd. They lock us in cages, serving time for life. Double digits for wisdom, cutting sharp like a knife. I'm here to say, the chains in the air, it's time we break free, start showing we care. No more flexing for nothing, no more selling out. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everybody doing? And this morning I got Don Tripp, horsepower freestyle, and I'll be right back right after this.
Hey, Stevie.
Here I go again down the road less traveled on. Got so many horses in the coop and need a saddle on. 40 with a 40, I blow it like a saxophone. It's fuck you, and if you got the message, nigga, pass it on. Live from the devil's catacombs with a bag of bones. If I don't bring the rice and cabbage home, we won't have a home. You ain't gotta give me jack shit, I'd rather have my own. In my own lane, I might need to set some traffic cones. All about my green, I feel like a set of salad tones. And I mean every word, closed caption on. Here we go again, here I am on this path alone. My mission ain't complete until I'm back at home. Grinding every day and night, nothing come for free, I had to pay a price. I don't trust nothing but my scale, I still weigh it twice. If it's fuck you, it's forever, ain't no playing nice. Pussy ass nigga, fix your skirt, it ain't ladylike. Every day's a gamble, but it's worth it if you play it right. Even when I was skinny, all my pockets had cellulite. Sitting in my studio with Jizzle Baby, 2019, he said, Trip, why you been chillin' lately? I said I go somewhere off the grid when I get irritated. He said, but you love this shit. I said, but it's filled with haters. He said, niggas gon' come for your spot if niggas feel it's vacant. I said, I've been waiting for that so long, I'm starting to get impatient. He said, bro, they copying the style that you originated. I said, don't you worry, brother, no one likes an imitation. He couldn't help but laugh at it. He said, man, this nigga crazy. We looked at each other and said, fuck it, let's go get this paper. Here I go again down the road less traveled on. Got so many horses in the coop, I need a saddle on. 40 with a 40 and I blow it like a saxophone. It's fuck you, and if you got the message, nigga, pass it on. Fuck you, and if you got the message, nigga, pass it on. Yes, fuck you, and if you got the message, nigga. Here I go again down the road less traveled on. Got so many horses in the coop and need a saddle on. 40 with a 40 and I blow it like a saxophone. It's fuck you, and if you got the message, nigga, pass it on. Long little pill.
Don Tripp, horsepower freestyle. What I wanted to bring to you first this morning is I don't know what to call a news story, whatever. But they did something about how kids are bringing guns into schools now more than ever. And I think that is something that we need to talk about as It is an issue, and that really doesn't matter what community that you're in. It is something that we all are facing. So here's a story that kids are bringing more guns to school.
Welcome to Breaking the News Plus on this Wednesday night. Tonight, we're going to dive into a pretty eye-opening report from the Star Tribune about guns found on school grounds in the state of Minnesota. To join me to talk about it, the journalist behind that report, Mara Klecker with the Star Tribune. Good evening, Mara. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So this was a pretty eye-opening piece. Tell us a little bit of your thinking in what you were trying to pursue when you embarked on this story.
Yeah, this came out of kind of a pop-up team discussion after the Annunciation school shooting. It was really all hands on deck when we were covering that. And then when we got a chance to kind of debrief, we had a bunch of us in the room just kind of thinking through smart follow-ups here. And anecdotally, I have seen and heard concern from parents that are saying, hey, we got this email from the school saying a gun was found. And one of the discussions in that pop-up team was like, how often is this happening? And so we went looking for who tracks this and found out that, this is part of the incident reports and dangerous weapon reports that go to the legislature each year. So we could actually track the numbers over time.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's smart reporting. And I would agree with you from a media perspective. For those of you at home, this is kind of what people like Mara and myself get on a daily basis in our email inbox is we get those notifications from individual schools or districts that say a gun was found, a weapon was found, and nobody was hurt. But it seemed like we were getting more. And in your reporting, Mara, you found that that's actually the case, right?
Yeah, definitely. So the real spike came after students returned to school post-pandemic. And, we've done a lot of reporting on the dysregulation that all of us felt during the pandemic. But schools really, felt that and saw that. Educators have been saying that ever since students returned to school after distance learning. And I think that really shows up in the spike too. Students during distance learning were, exposed to different things, and again had that dysregulation piece and maybe got used to carrying a gun, and that translated then back into when kids were going back to class, some of them had guns on them.
This jumps out. It's in the beginning of Mara and her team's report. Nearly 200 firearms, including about 150 handguns, have been found in Minnesota schools since the 2021-2022 academic year. And that is almost 3 times the number found in the school years spanning 2017 to 2020. Now that gets to, we have the data, or you gathered the data to show there is a significant increase. Were you able to unpack the why?
It's nuanced, right? And just like there are layers of solutions, there are layers of reasons here. School leaders and violence prevention researchers pointed to, again, the many reasons that students came back from the pandemic really elated, fearful, carrying weapons on them. But part of that was that they were worried that they would encounter other people with weapons on their way to and from school. So they felt like they needed to be armed. That is exacerbated by social media, right? A kid sees on Instagram that one of their peers is flashing a gun, and they feel like they don't want to be the only one that's not armed to defend themselves. So lots of reasons there, but that was one that struck me in the reporting as, pretty tragic.
Yeah, I think that you cited the Violence Project, Jillian Peterson, Dr. Peterson, talking about, and I remember speaking to her about something similar in that exactly what you said, seeing something on social media as a perceived threat or a threat. And so the student counters that by carrying a firearm too. And a lot of it has to do with not what's happening at school, but on the way to and from school. So feeling some sort of external threat to themselves, whether perceived or real, on their way to school and on their way home.
Exactly. Yep, that's what we were hearing, and I think that really speaks to the fact that, you know, schools are hubs of all things, and that means that whatever is happening outside of school and in the community and in these kids' lives then ends up kind of showing up at school, and I think these numbers really prove that out.
And did you have a chance in your data to geographically map this out? Is this just the city or is this statewide?
It's a little bit hard to tell with these reports. I mean, we just looked at the overall numbers that were showing up in the annual reports that go to the legislature. There are some kind of district by district reporting, but that is overall incident, like behavior incident reports, not broken down by weapons. So, you know, I know some of the feedback to this story was that this is a metro problem, and I think it is a little more widespread than that, but we don't necessarily have the data to show that right now.
Did you have the chance to talk to individual schools or districts about what they're trying to do to be more proactive instead of reactive? Is there anything that they've done that's worked?
Definitely. Yep. We talked to the leaders at Tartan High School, and, you know, they are really an example of kind of that combination of hardening solutions and soft solutions. So the hardening is the weapons detection systems, which is a little bit more nuanced than like a traditional metal detector, but students can walk through and it would sense a gun or a knife, which are more aimed at relationship building and, you know, prevention orientated responses. And then in St. Paul School District has partnered with the Violence Prevention Project over multiple years here, interviewing kids that have been involved in violence and really trying to understand the root causes and the reasons for that. So again, lots of layered, nuanced approaches here to try to both prevent and understand, and then, you know, respond if a weapon is brought onto school grounds.
And it should be noted too, this isn't just a metro problem, a Minnesota problem. Nationwide, we're seeing similar stories with these kids coming back post-COVID into a brand new world. Most
definitely. Yep. I mean, every education reporter I've talked to across the country is seeing that. You know, we've done story after story all over the country about the mental health need that schools are really seeing. And we also know that in the first year of the pandemic, there were more gun purchases. So frankly, there are more weapons in communities across the country as well.
Yeah, that access question seems to be one that comes up because quite obviously it's usually it's even elementary, middle, high school kid cannot, in most cases, purchase a gun by themselves, so they're getting it from home.
Exactly. And that's kind of left this question for school districts to answer. You know, is it their responsibility then to try to educate families and community members about safe gun storage? You know, does that cleanly fall in the responsibility of a school district or school leaders? And, you know, some say yes, and others are saying, yeah, we're dealing with that problem, but, you know, this is broader than us in terms of finding the solution as well.
Right, because, you know, you made a really salient point, I think, about, you know, a school as a hub. A student goes to said school every single day, but they're also a member of our wider community. And so this isn't just a problem for school X or school Y or school Z. It affects everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the weight that is really falling on, you know, the shoulders of school leaders. Like they feel that. And that's true, not just when we're talking about guns. That's true with so many other kind of societal issues that end up falling, you know, on the backs of school leaders trying to really serve the kids and be that hub for the community. You know, they're a great hub, but they can't have all the solutions alone. The hub needs to be a hub connected to many other resources and many other people dedicated to finding solutions.
And lastly, I admit ignorance to this. I didn't know it existed. So you referred a couple of times to this report to the legislature. So what has to be reported to the legislature? What is that?
These are dangerous incidents. So it's broader than just weapons, but one category is weapons. So every school district, every school that encounters a student with a weapon has to fill out a report, and then those reports are compiled into this annual report that then goes to the legislature. And it's fairly detailed. I mean, again, it's these overarching numbers across the state, but it does have a breakdown of guns and toy guns as well, types of guns, handguns, long guns, air guns, as well as knives. And knives are actually more commonly found on school grounds than guns and firearms. And then there's some other categories as well.
It's just a whole different universe, showing my age in that of what districts, teachers, staff, counselors have to deal with in our schools for our kids. Mara, I thank you for joining us tonight and for your report.
Yeah, that's crazy because, I mean, I went through metal detectors and, all those kind of things in high school. But, I mean, I honestly think that it's more dangerous and pertinent now than ever it has ever been in the past, in history. So next, I want to talk about the gun violence fight in St. Paul, because St. Paul, the city, is looking for their own gun reforms because the state is doing snail work or dragging their feet. So you do have some city entities and county that are trying to make gun laws in their own cities and in counties. So listen to this here in St. Paul.
St. Paul city leaders are considering a landmark gun violence prevention ordinance.
If it passes, St. Paul would become the first of more than a dozen Minnesota cities who want to make their own gun laws. Maria Bray is live in St. Paul at City Hall with more.
Kevin and Lindsay, Mayor Melvin Carter says given the Annunciation mass shooting that changes are needed. He says this isn't about taking away people's guns, but just giving cities the power to regulate them.
Is that we're going to do every single thing that we can to fight gun violence. We're not going to stop at this.
On Wednesday, Mayor Melvin Carter and the city of St. Paul introduced the gun violence prevention ordinance to city council.
That would allow us to enforce.
It includes the following bans within city limits: assault weapons as defined under state law, large capacity magazines that hold 20 or more rounds, and binary triggers. It also restricts guns from parks and city buildings and prohibits ghost guns in St. Paul. Moms Demand Action is in support.
I'm grateful that our cities are at least stepping up and saying we're going to do everything that we can to keep our cities safe.
But currently, state law restricts cities from enforcing gun changes unless state lawmakers decide to change that.
There's almost no chance that the state legislature will approve St. Paul's ordinance to restrict the sale and possession of firearms. The state legislature considers it their authority to do that.
Larry Jacobs is a political analyst. We also talked to the Gun Owners Law Center, who's not in favor.
For us, the biggest issue is that, one, people who look at the ordinances may not understand that they're not actually in effect yet. And so they may alter their conduct, and it will chill the exercise of their right.
At the November 5th City Council meetings, council members will hear public comments on this ordinance. And then a week later, that's when they plan to vote on this.
I think that is, we're heading into a time that is very unfamiliar to, I think, a lot of people. And we need to definitely pay attention. I've seen the post about people paying attention to the data centers that are coming into, that could potentially be coming into Pine Island and Cannon Falls. That's a lot of land between the two of them. I think that's the Pine Island one is like 462 acres. And the one in Cannon Falls is like 252 acres. So it's a lot of land. And as else, what comes with data centers, I know there's a lot of electricity used. I know that there's a lot of water used and a lot of power. So is that going to affect certain communities? Is that going to raise prices? We've seen, over the years of how they've done, certain things, or like when the oil booms, they were out big time in, South Dakota, North Dakota. And then I guess when the administrations changed, or when people's thinking has changed, we've seen a backdrop in those kind of towns. And now I think we're in a phase that we're going to see them once again. But I think what a lot of people missed is not only did we bring immigrants over, I think that's what we filled it with. I think we filled those kind of areas uh, with undocumented folks. And a lot of the resources for like COVID was supposed to be a one-time kind of help out filler because we had shit shut down. But as you look at it, when it comes to our politicians, it comes to our legislators, city councils, they want to keep on giving that money for a one time. That should have only been, we're not going through a COVID anymore. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not here, but we know way more about it now than we ever did. And why are we allowing or still paying for something that isn't even, I'm not going to say it's pertinent, but it's something that we don't deal with on a daily. It's not something that, is put in, I guess, people's faces, because right now it's more with people, transgenders. It comes, with the government shutdown. We're facing a lot of things. And I think people are in unfamiliar territory, and they're getting uncomfortable. And that's what we're actually starting to see in the world, starting to see in society, is people are there's a lot of afraid people. There's a lot of people that don't understand what's happening. And so their first emotions or their first feelings are to lash out. And I think we are definitely going to see a lot of lashing out in the next couple of weeks. Yesterday, the Minnesota Supreme Court made a decision to allow, and I don't know how this is going to work out. I know I've seen the posts, I've seen the news stories, and I want to play a little bit because this is from Fox 9. And they talked about how the Minnesota Supreme Court yesterday says transgender powerlifter was discriminated against.
A major ruling by the Minnesota Supreme Court regarding transgender athletes and its effects could go beyond sports.
So the court ruled that USA Powerlifting violated the state human rights law, that it discriminated by not allowing a trans woman to compete in women's events. Fox 9's Rob Olson is live at the state Supreme Court right now. And so, Rob, the advocacy group Gender Justice filed this complaint in 2019, and it has taken that long to get to this point. But what exactly now is the state Supreme Court saying?
Yeah, and this took a while to get through the state Supreme Court as well. The arguments were back in December, the ruling again coming this morning, but Gender Justice claiming a big victory here. There were two different claims that they'd filed, one about public accommodation, the one about discrimination in business. It was the public accommodation discrimination that the court said that absolutely USA Powerlifting had violated state laws in discrimination. Now, let's show you a picture here of the athlete at the center of this case. It is J.C. Cooper, a powerlifter, a transgender female who had transitioned from male to female and wanted to compete in powerlifting, but USA Powerlifting denied that. Now, they didn't have a transgender policy explicitly then. They have since then, and here's a capture of what that says on their website, and it really lists a couple of different reasons why here. One is some of the transition process, they believe, changes some of the hormones in the body, but also there's a biological advantage, they say, to being born biologically male, and so therefore they don't think it's fair inherently to the genetically female athletes in powerlifting. But again, the state's saying that is discriminatory under state law. Here's a bit of the reaction today from Gender Justice.
The court found USA Powerlifting liable for discrimination. In other words, that when it comes to discrimination, public accommodation, you cannot bar transgender women from women's sports teams. And that is a huge victory. We are so proud.
Yeah, Rob, this has been a really large conversation, and you also spoke with the attorney for USA Powerlifting and its past president. What is their reaction to this today? And do they also talk about maybe their plans, potential plans moving forward?
Yeah, I asked them about that very specifically. And again, they say that, this was a defeat to them on the one claim of public accommodation law. And that, by the way, extends to sports teams beyond them and in many other facets of society. But there's the other part, the business discrimination, which is being sent down to a lower court. So they say that will give them the opportunity to still make their case on that part of the law. But also because there's been nothing in this court order today from the Supreme Court that says there's any damages or any orders to change their policy, they say for now their policy will remain in place.
If we are obligated to include trans women, we are inherently discriminating against cis women, women who are born women and went through puberty as women, because the chances of their competing on an equal footing are essentially nil.
All right, so Rob, what happens next with all of this? While the ruling on the law seems clear, there was nothing from the Supreme Court ordering USA Powerlifting to pay any damages or to change their policy.
That goes back to then district court, where then that court will decide on damages, whether that's a payment or injunctive relief, whether that's ordering them to change their policy here in Minnesota. All of this against the backdrop of some federal cases that will be heading to the U.S. Supreme Court about Title IX and how transgender athletes are affected by that.
All right, Rob Olson outside the state Supreme Court today with that ruling on that transgender athlete. Thank you.
Well, still no.
All right, this feels almost illegal to know, but our windows were so old and just desperately needed to be replaced.
That's crazy to me in a lot of ways. I think we have a lot of things that.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here on this
Yes,
really
thank
exciting
you.
morning.
No, we don't want you. No, I'm just kidding. It's not nothing like that. I want to show next because I do feel like this plays a part in the things that we are facing, right? And I'm going to bring at some point, I think either this weekend or early next week when her next day is off, Miss Graham, but I want to bring Jennifer on it and to tell Anthony Graham's story. Because I this morning I was going back and forth with people that, oh, he's a meth head. And listen, I'm not saying what happened was right. It was a tragedy. I'm not saying that at all. It's a sad ass tragedy. But again, this is something that we could have prevented if we would take mental health seriously, if we took drug addiction seriously instead of criminalizing it. That's all that I'm saying. And I don't know how long Anthony had been using meth or, anything like that. I know he's been open about it. But that's not something that I can tell you like this is when I bring Jennifer on, we're going to talk about this, is how that the schizophrenia by him doing meth made it worse, made it a whole lot more that, something that he couldn't deal with, something that a lot of people couldn't deal with. So I want to talk a little bit about that story, about that situation. It's a very sad tragedy. I'll admit that. I'm not saying that what he did was right, because that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we should look at each other and give people the benefit of the doubt, because the whole story hasn't came out. So this weekend, an Albert Lee man, Anthony Lee Graham, 25, was involved in a wrong-way crash on I-35 in Freeborn County that injured 4 people and himself. According to the criminal complaint, Anthony told police he's schizophrenic and was experiencing a psychotic episode. He said he felt like something was watching him and that he feared for his life. He admitted to using meth before the incident, but what followed was not criminal intent. It was a mental health crisis spiraling out of control. Anthony is now sitting in Freeborn County Jail in a suicide suit, being treated like a threat instead of a patient. But here's the truth. Anthony Graham needs treatment, not punishment. This isn't about excusing what happened. It's about understanding why it happened. Minnesota law statute 611.026 recognizes that people suffering from psychosis cannot be held criminally responsible in the same way. What he needs right now is medical help, psychiatric stabilization, and compassion, not another cold cell. And to be honest, this is where we come in. The community has the power to speak up, share his story, and demand humane treatment for those battling mental illness. Because if we can save Anthony today, maybe we can save the next one tomorrow. And to be honest, I want to make sure his name does not become another statistic. Let's make sure Minnesota does better by its most vulnerable. And that's what we should be. What happened to people caring and people looking out for people that are way underprivileged? And I will be honest, like there's things in the last couple of months that have made me really, really realize that we have problems. We have issues when you have law enforcement officials, police, sheriffs that start to believe that medical emergencies and when people are in mental health crises are criminals. It really has me thinking, like, what are we doing wrong? Because no matter how loud we speak out for George Floyd, Dante Wright, I still think every day that we could do something more, that we literally could do something to stop or prevent. I won't even say stop, but prevent what is going on. And because I will tell you like this, there wouldn't be so much what they want to call criminals or, any of that stuff. So after thinking about the situations with the guy that was having a stroke and they thought he was drunk, and then with Anthony Graham, I came up with this: mental health is a real thing. Mental health isn't just a city issue. It affects families all across Minnesota. But for Black men in rural areas, the system too often mistakes a mental health crisis for criminal behavior or intoxication, and that's not justice. That's why I'm bringing forward the mental health crisis diversion mandate, a proposal that builds racial equity and anti-bias towards our bias standards into every crisis response. Requires training to help first responders tell the difference between psychosis and aggression. Partners with Black-led mental health providers for culturally responsive care. Prioritizes grants for communities hit hardest by disparities, including urban and rural Black areas. Sets aside, I know people are gonna be like, damn, that's a lot of money. I'm not, this is just a that I put in there. That is it, right? That's all that I've put in there. Doesn't mean that that's the way that it has to be or anything like that. But definitely it should be, a lot. I'm not saying a lot, but it should be where it makes an impact and not where it just makes a dent, but we can really smooth out that dent. So I've already reached out to, and what I want to talk about what that 20% is for, the funding specifically goes for equity initiatives to expand crisis teams in places like Hennepin and Ramsey County. I really do believe that some of our biggest counties, Ramsey, Hennepin, St. Louis, Olmsted, and even like in the Freeborn and Mauer, I forget what Eberly is, or not Eberly, Faribault, places where we have a very large, I won't even say large, but a big predominant, I won't even say predominantly either, but a big ass community, and those people sometimes are seen as criminals instead of seeing like that they're people in need, that they are people that need help. They don't mean to. And I've gone over this a lot in my head lately, over and over and over. And I can speak from experience of living in Minneapolis and moving to Red Wing, or not Red Wing, Rochester, and seeing things that, to be honest, I didn't think I would be able to. I would be able to see. I would be able to um, really understand that kind of culture or that kind of wake up. Because I honestly do believe when I looked, or not when I looked, when I came from uh, Hennepin and that bigger county down to Rochester, I really did feel, or I shouldn't say feel, but I seen a really different kind of, um, you know, I will say future, say of how people, what they were doing, and it's really, to me, it's uh so here's Kelsey. I don't know who Kelsey is, but I will say this: there's things that are coming that people are saying, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't have your own emotions and your own feelings. Um, but this reminds me, and again, I think to myself so many times this: we can't sit here, and we need to stop rushing to a judgment and understand that people have feelings, people have situations that they go through. And I do think a lot of things have happened, um, and they shouldn't have, you know. And are those things that we could have prevented? Are those things that we could have, um, yeah, I just don't get it, you know, because I'm not saying that people, yeah, I don't understand it sometimes, and maybe I ain't supposed to. I don't know. It just, you know, it really, really does trip me out, and I honestly don't know what to say about it too much anymore. And um, yeah, it's just insane to me in some ways. And it's like, what can we do to sit here and bring people closer together, or closer to? Yeah, I don't get it.